So today I want to talk about self-image or like self-esteem. I know, like you mentioned earlier, it's kind of a heavy topic for most people because it is so influential in our lives. But I think because I'm in such like a sheltered environment right now, being in high school like 5 days a week, I just wanted to see what you guys thought of self-image or what your self-image is like throughout your years outside of school.
Hey everyone, welcome to XYZ Storytellers, a platform started by three people across generations X, Y, and Z, engaging in conversations in the spirit of increased empathy and understanding.
Hi, I'm Erin, the millennial traveler and author. I'm an empath with a drive for connecting to others. I enjoy singing in the car, eating pints of ice cream, and hanging out with my cat Gimbal.
Hey, I'm Rich, the gray-beard Gen Xer with 30 years in conference rooms or airplanes around the globe. I've also been a Little League coach and a family bus driver. This podcast is a way for me to have the types of conversations that just don't happen enough in my day-to-day life.
And me, I'm Lily. I've always been very opinionated and I speak passionately about things no matter who I might be with at the time. I'm here to share my thoughts and get the perspectives of two other generations so I can grow and expand my understanding of the world around me.
With XYZ Storytellers, our conversations aren't meant to be political, social, or even related to current events. We are just recording authentic conversations on a variety of topics, hoping they will resonate in some small way. Thanks for listening.
I think there's a lot of maturity in there, and your write-up was pretty interesting. So hopefully we'll be able to cover off the topic, and it'll be an enjoyable conversation. I'm sure it will be. So Erin, do you want to start out and give your thoughts when you first read the outline that Lily sent about self-image?
You know, the first thing that I kind of thought about was, and I can't remember who wrote about it or if I read it in a book or someone told me, there's all those things flying around your mind that you can't remember where exactly they came from. But I remember making a list at one point of the 5 people from whom I really, truly valued their input. And it kind of made me think about, how sometimes I have to step back and remind myself that my self-worth shouldn't be coming from the places that I'm trying to pull it from. So that was my first reaction, is that it's a reflection on how frequently I try to pull self-worth from somewhere that's really not going to give me an accurate read of how needed I am in the world or how respected I am.
Okay.
So I think the lesson that I was provided was to write down a list of 5 people, and every time you doubt yourself, if you're headed in the right direction, or if you feel like, I don't think I did well enough on this whatever, then you look at that list of 5 people and you ask one of them, and they're going to tell you what you really need to hear.
Right. And that doesn't necessarily mean you need to hear something that you like. I mean, you might hear an honest feedback, but it helps you validate, right? Mm-hmm. I think that does go to make sure you pick people that are going to be honest with you, but also, whenever you get that kind of feedback, especially if you want to be that open with somebody, you need to know that they'll deliver it with empathy, right? So right. I think that's a great thing. I think the thing I thought was, okay, so here's the high school student asking that $10,000 question, thinking that, well, the guy in the gray beard's got it figured out. And I can tell you, Lily, that's self-image, self-worth, whatever you want to call it, and how you view yourself versus how the world views you. That's a thing that you will carry with you through your adult life. Now, it definitely manifests itself in different ways at different stages of your life. For me, I know it definitely at times played almost no role, but there was something there, versus there are times when it was a big part, and I had a lot of questions. And I think, looking at your self-worth or your legacy, if you want to call it, what difference you're making in the world, all of those things are valid things to be considering as you go through your journey. And sometimes you may not like the answer that you give yourself, but I will tell you though, the people that you're drawing your feedback from today, those people that you're trapped in that high school building with every day, and the vibe that's in that building, it definitely, simmers down. You're not in that, pressure cooker kind of environment where you have to be in the room and it's all around you. And if people aren't making you doubt your self-worth, Did you accidentally have an impact on someone else? Did you witness somebody else bullying I mean, all those things that you see, I think it is a very compressed environment, both in time and the number of instances where that kind of questioning goes on. I don't think it happens as much as you get older. But I will say, though, I know for me, it turns into your own internal dialogue that you're dealing with more than what other people are putting upon you as you get older. And I think that's where some people can get stuck. They can navigate high school fairly well, but yet come out the other side and then they become their own worst enemy, as far as self-talk and self-image. So that would be my opening comment. What are your thoughts about that, Lily? About what?
Well, I'm curious to know, Lily, what inspired the question? Did something happen? Were you just kind of sitting there going through different topics that you're interested in? How did this kind of come about?
Well, I was thinking about, so I started AP Psychology today as one of my courses, and a few days ago I was just thinking, like, I wonder what we're going to talk about. I wonder, like, what disorders and what mental illnesses that we're going to talk about. And I realized that self-worth and self-image is such, like, a heavy topic that affects so many people and can cause so many, like, stressful or, like, even harmful situations, because some people take it so seriously that they feel like that's, like, their whole life is what other people see them as or what they see themselves as. And I just wanted to understand, like, if I'm the only one that thought that, because since we're all different ages, I just wanted to see if you guys had, like, if your self-image has such a big influence on your life right now as it does on me since I'm in high school. And I just wanted to see your thoughts on
it. How do you think that your self-worth is currently being fed? Is it through social media? Is it through interactions with your friends, through your grades? What do you feel like your current sources are?
I think my current sources right now mostly is my grades, because that's what I'm focusing on the most. But since I'm growing up in such, like, a digital age, I guess you could say, it's going to be social media the more that I think about it, because, like, my dad, for instance, he didn't grow up with social media, so his self-worth came from, or his self-image, or whatever you want to call it, it came from the people around him, his parents, his siblings, maybe his grades, because he did work hard in school. So I think that for every generation it was different, but for me it's mostly my grades and social media, because social media is so, oh my gosh, it's so judgmental. Like, it's probably the worst thing ever if you want to go and, like, feel confident about yourself. So I definitely think that's it.
What was your reason for being on social media? Kind of taking a side tangent, but not really a tangent.
My reason for being on social media was, like, I think I was the first one in my family to ever get Instagram. No one knew what that was. It was like 2010. I had my own mini iPad. I just downloaded Instagram, and it was just, like, this whole thing. It felt like Facebook, but for kids. That's what I called it. It just seemed so fun, and, like, everyone had Instagram, like, everyone's doing it, and you know how everyone wants to do what everyone's doing. Like, no one wants to feel left out of the loop, and no one wants to feel like they're missing out. And all my friends were like, oh my gosh, did you download Instagram? And I was like, yeah, I got it. I finally got it. And I started posting, like, pictures of my family, of me, of random things that I thought was cool. And it just, like, it made me feel so cool. And people started liking my pictures. I was like, oh my gosh, they actually like me. Like, they think what I'm doing is cool. So I guess that's where it started, was, like, just posting random pictures of myself.
So how do you think that translates into, because you mentioned wanting to do what everyone else is doing, how do you think that translates or corresponds to self-worth and where we get our self-worth from? Because arguably that has a lot to do with it. Like, we want to be included. I was considering canceling my gym membership to Orange Theory because I wasn't seeing the progress that I wanted. And so I actually sat down with the trainers and told them that I really needed to focus on strength building instead of cardio, because I need to build muscle before my body understands how to kind of burn the fat that I want to lose. And they said, well, you can always modify the workout. So you can take the, high repetitions and just do a fewer reps, but with higher weights. I'm like, yeah, but that's not what everyone else is doing. And so much of that comes back into play of, I want to be with and around what everyone else is involved in. So how do you think that corresponds with self-worth and how we measure that?
Because I think from even like very early on, there's been this whole like mindset of follow the leader, or like sheeple, like people are sheep, I guess. Like they all travel in a pack. That's what people say. It's because if you're the different one, you constantly think like, oh, what are they thinking about me? Like, what are they talking about? Because if they're talking, they might not even be talking about you, but your brain just automatically is like, are they talking about me because I'm not doing the same thing as them? So you just want to be included so you don't feel like you're doing something wrong, even though you could be doing something completely normal. It's just this whole group mindset that makes you want to follow other people. Otherwise, you feel like you're doing something wrong, and that affects you because you feel like you're left out, I guess.
See, it's interesting because, I mean, even without social media, there were cliques when I was going through high school. There were the jocks, there were we call them the hoods, but the hoods they wore the hoodie jackets with the leather jackets over the top. And so, you couldn't wear them inside. So you had this guy in a leather coat. He's got the, sweatshirt type hood hanging out the back of his jacket. And you had the jocks and the geeks and the theater kids and the band kids. And so,
Which one were you, Rich?
It's funny. I was an athlete, but I don't know that I think I prided myself on not being a part of any one clique fully, which was in its own way isolating, because I was class president, but that's just because I probably worked harder on the campaign and I was a more effective campaigner. It wasn't necessarily, I never viewed being class president as any indication of my popularity. And I think that probably was a realistic view, because I never felt like the most popular kid in school. But at the same time, though, because I never identified with any one clique, there was two dynamics that I struggled with. One was I could go and talk to any group. I could find myself over at lunch chatting with the folks on the in the band, or I could then find myself over talking to folks that were out having cigarettes outside, and I could have a quick surface level conversation with just about anybody. But at the same time, though, I'd go to parties on the weekend, and back in my day, you went to like you'd have a keg party out in the middle of the woods somewhere, and it'd cost you $3 for a plastic cup, and you'd go and you'd be able to get some beer out of the keg. This is just history, Lily. Don't get any ideas. But anyway, I would be there, and I would go, same thing. I would kind of go from group to group, but it was never, hey, Rich, good to see you. And they would chat. It was always kind of this gentle ribbing of, I don't know if I like the idea of my class president being out here on the weekend. And, you sure you don't have some things you should be doing? And then I'd move to the next group and they'd have the same joke. And so I realized that while I never really was pulled into any one clique and I could socialize with anybody, because I never really got pulled to any one clique, I never really belonged anywhere. It was kind of an interesting thing where as the class president, I'd go out and I'd go around, have everybody tell that joke. About a half an hour after having 5 different times where that joke was told, I'd hand my cup off to somebody else, get in my car and drive home, and end up watching movies with my parents, because it was like, I don't, I get enough ribbing from my brothers. I don't need it from my classmates, right? So self-worth is a dangerous thing because you think you have it and then it's fleeting. As far as if you get it from external sources, right? I mean, self-worth is important. Trust me, everybody's, and that goes to our earlier conversation. I was thinking about this when we talked about random acts of kindness. Anybody who does random acts of kindness and can make a difference in any one person's life on any given day has worth. And so the trick is recognizing that, and then recognizing that any person has inherent worth, whether you do random acts of kindness or not, everybody has inherent worth.
I think the word that you threw out there was belong. Have you guys read or listened to much of Brene Brown's work?
I've listened to a couple of the podcasts around what's her number one topic though? It's
vulnerability is her research, but she talks about this idea of fitting in versus belonging. And true belonging is being able to be yourself, identifying self-worth, being able to do your own thing with confidence. And fitting in is being able to mesh with all of those different groups, as I kind of envision you walking your way around different, gatherings at a party. Belonging has nothing to do with fitting in per se, but more so whether or not you feel like you can do your own thing with or without the approval of others. So I just thought that was interesting that you used the word belong. I thought that was interesting that you used the word belong, because I think we put so much emphasis on this idea that we need to belong somewhere, and in all reality, we need to belong to ourselves and to our own values. And what's got me thinking is maybe self-worth comes from different priorities. So if I'm attempting to become an artist, my self-worth might not come from getting the most invitations to a party or getting the most LinkedIn connections. Maybe my self-worth is going to be more focused on how many paintings have I sold, or how many likes have I gotten on this particular post on Instagram about this piece of art. So I think it's interesting, because if you ask when I was younger, I thought that self-worth came from approval from everyone on everything. And in all reality, it all depended on what I was measuring at that time. If I was measuring my ability to be a socialite and have friends, then not getting an invitation to a party would hurt a lot more than if my only focus was, becoming an artist. And then I might not really care if I didn't get a bunch of invitations to parties, because I was succeeding in the art world and I had approval from the art world. So I think it also depends on what your focus is and what your priority is. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Lily?
I think that's accurate. Like I agree with that 100%, but I also think that people, if you are an artist and you're trying to be an artist and that's what you want to do, and you're making art 24/7 and you're trying to improve yourself and you're researching it, and you don't really care if you don't get invited to a party, that's totally cool. That doesn't affect your self-image at all. But I think it's the fact that I don't know how to explain it. I really don't know how to explain it. Like, if you're focusing on art and it doesn't bother you not to go to a party, or you're trying to be like a soccer star, so you don't care that you didn't get invited because you want to go to practice soccer. It's just the fact that everyone else is going to that party. Most people that are going to that party. So it's like the fear of missing out, I guess, for some people. That's what affects them.
Good old FOMO. So it's more about having the opportunity, not necessarily feeling like you need it, but knowing that the opportunity is there.
It's not like they want to go. They don't even have to want to go. They don't even care about the party. It's just, I wonder what's going on at that party. Like, what am I missing out on? Like, I wonder who's doing what. It's just that kind of thing. And they're like, oh, I wonder why I didn't get invited.
Yeah. So the idea of self-worth then is coming from a fear of missing out, really, and not feeling like you have opportunity. Is that?
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I guess for me, if I was trying to focus on one thing and that's what I wanted to do with my life, I would still want to have the opportunity to do something else without feeling trapped in that one box of this is what I want to do. So that way I don't feel like I'm trapped in something.
Rich, maybe you could speak to the difference between feeling, because I know we talked about success and what it feels like to be successful. What's the difference between feeling successful and having self-worth?
Well, I don't know if I can answer that directly, but I think you're hitting on a thing that I wrote down some notes. I mean, I wrote down a couple of words here on the page. So I wrote down scorecard and I wrote down transactional. And I think the danger of the world we live in, and it's not all related to to social media. I mean, these dynamics have played out. So first off, I can encourage you, Lily, to take a little bit less pressure or feel like you're a little less stuck in this dynamic because of social media. I will say that it definitely magnifies certain aspects of it, but I don't know that your generation is struggling anymore, in a general sense. But I will say, though, that there's more evidence that you see even parents and adults now, right? Whereas it might have been invisible to you, you can see parents posting things on Facebook or and you know that it's all about trying to get the likes or to get the, and I think the word that I've heard used is thirsty, right? I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are making posts that are thirsty posts, right? All they want is the likes and they want that, right? And there's an element of addictiveness. There's an element of getting that adrenaline rush or whatever it is. So, you mentioned about success versus self-worth. So think about times when you've done something or you've been about to do something and you were nervous and you're very conscious of the things around you, and then you got yourself into it, and then there were times when you were into it a little bit but you could see that you were aware of what was happening around you, and then there were times when you felt like you were, quote, in the zone and you were fully immersed, and it was almost like you had completely, like your physical body had disappeared and it was like you were just in it. And so you understand the three different flavors I'm talking about? So to me, self-worth comes from that third piece, that you are in it. You're in life. You're in that moment. You're in that classroom. And you're just learning what you need to learn, and you're pulling energy and you're laughing along at the jokes, and you're not even aware of your own physical presence, let alone the physical presence of the people around you. Or going to a movie, right? The crappy movie, you can tell what temperature it is in the theater, you know where the exit is, you can smell the popcorn behind you. The okay movie, you can kind of, every once in a while, you'll hear the little chattering next to you. But that really good movie, the whole room just disappears, right? So for me, that's when I feel like I'm at my best, is when I'm oblivious to anything except being in the moment, including my own physical presence. And you mentioned about belonging and connect. I think it's about feeling connected. And I think the irony of when you have no physical awareness around you and you're totally in the moment, that's when we're the most connected. Whether I belong in that situation or not, whether I felt like I was going to feel it's all irrelevant at that point, right? I am connected. And I think that because they're so closely aligned, they're not the same. But if I feel like I belong somewhere, I'm more inclined to feel connected to what's going on. And I think the danger where you get into challenges around self-image is you could let go of feeling like you needed to belong. And it really is, do I feel like I'm at least connected to these people at some level? And it could just be, I'm connected to these people because I'm talking to these two people on the podcast. I'm connected to my classmates because we're all in this class together and I'm in this moment with this group of people. And I think that's where you can get, your energy from. I think self-image, I don't know, for me, I know I'm kind of rambling a little, but I was in my 40s and I was still thinking, okay, gee, I'd see an occasional post or I'd hear a story about somebody who was now a president of an organization, a company, or a classmate of mine who, owned a yacht. And I'm thinking to myself, these are all people who were 8 years old when I was 8 years old. They were 9 years old. You know what I mean? And I started doing this comparison, and my self-image came from, am I as far along as I should be? Have I done what I could have done? And I used to get trapped in that. And it was more created because of my own self-image of feeling like I haven't accomplished all that I could have accomplished. And some of it has to do with, when you talk about self-image, am I realizing my full potential? and so my self-image at times, I would struggle more with my own internal dialogue than anything to do with anybody else. And the most freeing moment was when I stopped scoring myself against peers, age peers. And my self-image went up when I realized it had nothing to do with what my title at work was or how much money. My self-image got better when I stopped using scorecards and or I viewed things as transactional. How many parties did I get invited to? How many people showed up for my birthday party? Did I even have a birthday party? Did I have enough people to call and have a party? It's like, look, I've now gotten to a point in my life where I'm less transactional and less scorecard driven and more just I try to be in that moment and live in that present moment.
Would self-worth even be a measurement if we were in isolation?
Self-worth. Well, I still think about my legacy. What legacy am I leaving? Right. And so I don't know, it goes to that thing about people who have nothing or people in third world countries, and you ask them, how happy are you compared to 10 years ago? And they go, happiness? Explain happiness. I don't understand this happiness concept. I get up
Because I feel like when I was traveling, like if I really look back on times that I felt worthy, that I felt like I was, I don't want to use the word belonging because that's kind of a different topic in a way, but when I really felt like I was connected and worthy of this body that I'm occupying, it was in those moments, you're right, when it was just tunnel vision. And I was feeling so connected to the world around me and to the people around me. And most of the time it was with people that I couldn't speak the same language with. So it was, you know, a woman on a train who gave me a scarf because she wanted me to stay warm and literally offered me a bite of her half-eaten burrito because she just wanted to take care of me as a human.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in that moment, I felt the most worthy because I was being treated not of a certain type of person, or I was just being treated as a human should be. And I think that that's what makes me feel worthy, is knowing that I can connect with people on that one underlying basis that we are human. And that is an experience that we can all share regardless of other identifying or defining traits. And so it would be interesting to raise well, you wouldn't really raise them, but to have someone born and start to survive in total isolation and ask them if they feel worthy. Because I feel like the more people that I connect myself with, the less worthy I feel on a superficial level, because there are all these other people doing incredible things, none of which or most of which I might have any actual interest in doing, but because they seem so successful and so passionate about their work, I start to feel like, why haven't I done more? Why haven't I accomplished more with the life that I have? And that's when my self-worth starts to plummet. So I almost feel like as our networks get bigger, our self-worth is fought against so much harder.
Well, and I think, Lily, what's your response? I've been doing a lot of talking, so.
Oh, I was just going to say I agree because I'm just listening to what she had to say, and I guess she was right about that, because I guess a lot of it comes from comparing yourself, like how she said, like, these people are so successful, and that's not even what she wants to do. Like, say this person is like a surgeon at some random hospital, really successful. She might not even want to be a surgeon. She's just comparing herself at how successful they are and how happy they are and how passionate they are. So if you put someone in isolation and told them to grow up by themselves and just do whatever they wanted, and then ask them later on, do you feel worthy of this life? Do you think you did enough to feel worthy? I think they would say yes, because what else are they supposed to do other than what they are passionate about, and without comparing themselves to other people?
It's interesting. I'm going to get profound for a minute. So I've been taking this coaching training program, and it talks about energy levels. And we all have, you know, our days and our weeks and our lives, we go up and down through this scale of negative and positive energy. But we all have an inherent energy. So I want to go back to what you said, Aaron, about the more people you meet, the more you start to doubt your worth because you compare. And that's human nature, right? That's the human condition. So, but that's something that can be worked upon, and that's something that you can take a step back from. And I think you inherently realize that's just It's not necessarily a healthy mindset. And sometimes it's understanding why, where did that come from, and do I want to give power to that, right? But but separate from that, what really struck me when you were talking was when you said, look, this woman, she wanted to help me because at a human level, she felt I was worthy of that, being warm and being fed, and how you felt most connected and most worthy in that moment. And it goes to that comment about what I said about we are all born with an inherent worth. Okay. So think for a moment, if you will, of I'm holding, let's just, for example, just say I'm, I'm holding an LED. Let's just pretend for a moment this is an LED light bulb, and it's been wrapped in Scotch tape. And if you wrap it in enough Scotch tape, it almost has no luminescence whatsoever. Fair? But if I took off all of the Scotch tape, that small light bulb has enough brightness to fill a room. So let's pretend for a moment that let's draw an analogy and say that that Scotch tape is your network of more and more people. And when you add more and more lenses and more filters and more scorecards and more data points, yeah, you start to feel, because you're focused on those, and what does that do? That covers over, and you get to a point where you're like, I don't have any inherent worth. But hold on a second. If I peel that all back again, and I get back to my core, I have so much more brightness and potential light than anything you could imagine this small little LED light could display. And I could fill a room just with that and have done nothing other than being fully present, fully myself, and not put any lenses or any filters around it. So what I heard when you said, when that woman gave you a bite of her burrito and a scarf, was she saw you with no Scotch tape wrapped around you. What I hear is when you're in a room full of very accomplished people, you are giving them, and you feel their perspective is through all of their own filters, which makes you look less bright. So who's the loser truly? Have you really lost any of your brightness? No. Do they see your full potential? Well, here's the funny thing. Those filters that you put on yourself and gave them is your bias of how they see you. They could be seeing you as exactly the same way that lady on the train saw you. You're putting the filters on and giving them the glasses and go, oh, you're highly successful. Hold on a second. That's the really, really dark lens. Let me put these sunglasses on, and you're not going to see any of my brightness because you're a successful person. And the thing that's crazy about all of it that I'm learning more and more, and what people find out is, I just don't feel worthy. I don't feel. Stop it. No, I mean, genuinely, and it's taken me 53 years, and I'm not some 80-year-old, wizened old monk or whatever. But I've done enough thinking. Lily will tell you, I spend half my time off into the wilderness, somewhere else, churning through thoughts. I'm like, I can be in the room and not even be in the room because I just think and overthink things. But don't just stop. I can stop feeling unworthy. Just forgiveness is the best example. If you've ever been truly wronged, we all have in our own way at some level, and it was very real for all of us in whatever age we were. Lily, this does not mean, you know what I mean? Everybody can feel truly wrong. But let me ask you, what's the most light-hearted moment and the freeing moment you have is when you give that forgiveness. Truly forgive. All of that melts away. It's the exact same thing. I'm going to choose to not look at myself through other people's filters that I'm giving them, and I'm going to embrace my self-worth. And I'm never going to, Lily, you mentioned about conceit. I'm never going to complain. I'm never going to say that my self-worth is greater than anybody else's, but I definitely don't have any reason to believe it's any less than anybody else's.
Did you come up with that analogy of a light, or was that part of the training?
No, I just did that on the fly.
I really liked that.
No, that was really good. That was a really good spot on analogy.
Well, people tell me
because you're
pictures.
you're absolutely right. I mean, when I look at a successful person, for example, and I love that this is kind of coinciding with our conversation about success because it all is very interrelated. I assume that someone is seeing me with a certain filter. For example, getting really real here. So when I was in middle school, and especially 5th and 6th grade, I was pretty chubby. I was not, I was a typical middle schooler, but I had a bit of extra chunk on me. And end of 7th grade and beginning of 8th grade, I started to lose a lot of weight. I started working out a little bit more, eating healthier. I was playing a lot of softball. I was getting fit, and I dropped a bunch of weight. And all of a sudden, I started gaining friends, and people started paying attention to me. And ever since that experience, I've had this fear in the back of my mind of, oh my God, I can't gain weight because nobody's going to be my friend. And that was the perception that I not only gave myself, it was the story that I told myself. But now if I see someone who looks thinner than me, then I'll assume that they're seeing me in that light because that's how I have put that own filter on my own body and on my own self-worth. And so I think that light example is really fascinating because I'm picturing all of these different filters. Like if you work in a video studio or anything where they use those heavy duty light filters, let's say red is wealth, and people of money don't want to talk to people with no money, or one is weight or outward appearance, another one is degree, and you keep adding all these colors until you just get black. And I just really like that visual of closing off the light with so many different filters or tape. Because it really makes you question what are the filters that I feel like others are putting on me, but in all reality, I'm putting them back on myself. I think that's key in that example, is that it's not just expecting others to clear their filters of us, it's the filters that we put on ourselves and then kind of impose on those around us.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hashtag no filter.
Oh, I think that's awesome. I mean, that's powerful. And it's, it came to me because it's definitely something that has spoken to me over the years as far as that kind of realization, right? I mean, think about, you could take two, to use your analogy, and using just an objective measure of weight, not from a medical perspective. You could take two equally overweight middle schoolers, and for some reason, one is like everybody's best friend, and another one is this shy and withdrawn, and that goes to that analogy that we just threw out there, right? The people were gravitating to the personality and to the light that person let through, and they didn't see the weight. Now, does that mean that person didn't get occasionally bullied by just a jerk or whatever? Or, yeah. Or if they were in a bad mood and somebody met them and they didn't see their true light, that they saw yes, there's a lot of variables there. It's not this constant thing, right? And does that mean that the person who put those filters up didn't occasionally have a wonderful day and get in that moment where nothing else mattered, and they had a great time at a party, and then they went back and went, wow, how did that just happen? How will I ever reproduce that? And then all of a sudden they struggle because they can never quite hit that target again, right? I mean, it's an ebb and flow, it's an in and out, it's kind of this phasing, and you want to hit that right wavelength. So it's not an absolute, and that's the art, right? If you're on the right side and you're putting more filters up, or you don't know, you're not putting filters up, or you're peeling filters away, there's people that, some of the prettiest people in the world, that could be some of the darkest souls, and you almost can sometimes give people this preconceived notion of, oh, here's an attractive person, they're going to be kind and nice, and then you have a conversation with them and it's like, oh man, but I mean, so it goes both ways. You can put a filter on, to use your filter analogy, right? are you putting the filter in front of yourself? Are you putting the filter in front of them? But who's in control of both filters? Each of us.
Well, and should we even care? You know, there are certainly, I mean, we all instinctively do it. And I work with high schoolers on this idea of prejudice, and that is a certain kind of filter and the story that we tell ourselves about other people. You know, for a perfect example is I approached a woman who had been sitting outside of a Starbucks for a while. She had a bunch of suitcases with her. She was a little bit elderly. I wasn't quite sure if she had a home or what she was doing. She'd been there for hours. And so I just went up to her and I just asked her, you know, hey, can I, you know, help you with anything? Do you need directions? Because she looked really lost and she was kind of talking to herself. And I was just wanting to make sure that she was okay. And she got really snippy with me. She's like, I don't need your help. You don't even care. And she just started yelling at me. Now it turns out later, because I had told this story to someone else and they had connections in the area and knew someone who knew her story, and she was indeed homeless. She did struggle with mental illness and she didn't have a place to go. But the story that I had told myself was that she needed help, and wanted somebody to reach out a hand. And maybe that's not what she needed. And I had put up my own filter and my own prejudice said that she needs help. But in all reality, maybe she was totally fine on that bench and I had just ruined her day because I bothered her peace and quiet. I mean, we all tell ourselves certain stories about the people around us, and it goes kind of back to acts of kindness. And the reason that we do the things that we do are because of the stories that we tell ourselves about those around us. Driving, someone cuts you off, you think, what a jerk. But maybe they're running late to the hospital because a parent is passing away, or you have no idea what other people are going through. And so I think it's interesting that there are those three different filters. There are the filters that we put on other people about them, the filters that we put on other people about us, and the filters that we put on our own lenses about ourselves. Right. And so there's different layers to it. And I think that maybe practicing mindfulness about when those layers are being placed and what the outcome will be if we place that filter on there could be transformational at that point.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think it's an overused term, but people talk about mental health or your journey through life and it's about being present in the moment, fully in the moment. And the idea of, to your point, if you're standing back because you've got a preconceived notion, there's a filter there. If you're kind of not fully engaged, then there's maybe there's a filter. To your point about the woman, and maybe in that moment she didn't, there's context. There's always context. People are complex anyway. So all of that being said, though, you know, some of the art of it is certain interactions just don't go well. But you can't turn everything into a referendum on your place in the world either. So in that example, one of your outcomes could very well genuinely be, well, someone's in a bad mood today. You know, in your heart, you gave what you thought was the most genuine reflection of yourself in that moment. And sometimes it doesn't work. Well, then, okay. You move on, she moves on, you know, and so there's context and there's interactions and it goes to the transaction. But I think sometimes the danger when you look at social media, and I'll tell you, you know, we'll tie it back to social media a little bit. In social media, the attention span is so short that in some ways, the quickest way to get over a bad post is the next good post you can come up with, right? And people will quickly let go of the one. I'm amazed at how many people, it used to be like if you let a bad picture get posted, or if something got put up there that was, oh my God, that's going to follow you for the rest of your life. There's things that happen now online that I see and read about that an hour later, people have moved on to the next item, and there's no permanence. You know, I don't know, Lily. I don't know if there's more permanence in high school than there is now, but I'm amazed at how many people do stupid things and then people just forget they did those stupid things, and you're as good as your last post, really.
No, there's definitely no permanence. People will move on. Literally, they scroll past it and they forget about it. That's just how it works.
So,
I think, yeah, no.
so I'm gonna turn something back around because and Lily, this might be part of what you just mentioned, but I'm gonna share with you another perspective that's helped me get what I think is a healthier mindset, and it took me a lot of time. So I mentioned about I would always look at where I was and how I compared to someone else who maybe had a better career, made more money, had a bigger house, had a nicer car. And it wasn't that I was like saying that in and of itself, but it was like always going, well, it could be, a little bit more. So Aaron, I'll put this to you because you brought it up about, as you get more and more network, how much time do you spend thinking about other people and judging them on how they compare to where you thought they'd be versus where you are? How much of your energy do you spend judging other people on any given day?
It's funny that you asked me that today because I spent about 3 to 4 hours discussing with both of my parents issues with my brother. So funny enough, you picked the one day.
Let's not take a one-off conversation about siblings. I'm talking strangers. I'm talking
on a regular basis. I mean, here's the thing: is everyone that I run into and everyone that I talk to, and a lot of what I've been doing lately is talking to new people. So I'm very rarely.
Maybe I want to qualify negative because rather than viewing everybody as a successful or whatever, how much time do you actually go, that guy's not accomplished nearly as much as I thought he was going to accomplish? This guy over here, I thought, no, he's definitely not. I can't believe that person's not. How much time do you spend doing that kind of judging as opposed to just observing other people being successful? Or
well, I was gonna say, like, I see people more as having more potential than where they are. So it's not necessarily a, wow, I can't believe they haven't accomplished this yet, but wow, I can't believe the places that they're going to go. And so I think in my mind, it's more of seeing what people already have and going, I can't wait to see what you do with that. And that's not saying that it's, you haven't done anything yet. It's just saying you have so much left to do.
No, and when I say judge, I mean negatively, just saying what a loser, or I can't believe they don't have none, right? But yet, we're willing to put that as the dialogue that's coming at us from everybody else. Would there genuinely be people going, I can't wait to see Erin and what she's going to get to, she's accomplished as much as she has in 24 years. I can't imagine what it's going to be like in 10 years. Yeah, there's people that are fans, there are people that are rooting for you. There's people that are hoping that you're able to realize your potential and get out of your own way or whatever the case might be. The analogy I use with my boys, and I think I might have used it with Lily, I don't know, but did you play team sports, Erin?
Yes, yeah.
So one of the biggest fears people in team sports have was making a mistake and letting their teammates down. And the story I would tell is, so you're playing a game and your teammate's in right field and the ball gets hit to him and he misses the ball and the run scores, throws it in, and all he wants to do is he wants to crawl into the ground and disappear. And then what you didn't know is leading up to that thing, he was so afraid of making a mistake, he almost didn't even come to the game that day, right? I mean, all those different things. And then I said, well, so let me ask you a question. You're at shortstop and your teammate's in right field and you see the ball go out to right field and the ball goes through his legs. What are your range of emotions and thoughts? Well, the first thing I think about is I want to get the play, so hopefully he runs after it. As long as he runs as hard as he can and throws it in, I'm not going to get mad at him. Will I be disappointed that our team maybe had a situation that wasn't up? Yeah, I'll be disappointed. But also, too, there's a part of us that are going, man, I'm glad that wasn't me because that's my biggest fear. But how many of those energies are truly negative at the right fielder? None of them. I could be selfishly thinking, going, thank God that wasn't me. I could be thinking, oh my gosh, look how hard he worked. He ran his butt off to throw it in. You know, I watched him in practice and he's been working on that all week. And, you know, so I know he wants to do well. I mean, all those feelings of empathy come through, but yet we all sit there and we're afraid of making a mistake because everybody will mock us. And the thing, to your point about teasing or clickiness in high school, Lily, if you have ever been caught in one of those moments, that moment stays with you. And it becomes a lens in just about every other. And you carry the emotion of that one negative experience into your next 5 exchanges. And the 5 exchanges that nobody puts that same mocking attitude towards you, but yet that's the filter you put on it because you flash back, you know? I don't know. I think we have far more, if I had to sum it up, we have far more control than we give ourselves credit for. And I can just stop putting up filters in front of me. I can stop putting filters up in front of other people. People can't hurt me if I don't give them the power to hurt me. You know, I want everybody else to do well, and I genuinely feel that way. Well, then why can't I feel that everybody wants me to do genuinely well? I mean, just flip how you view everyone else, or when you see it, and just turn it around on yourself without putting your own filter on it.
Well, and the reality is that, are there going to be people who look at me and say, oh, she has so much left to accomplish, I can't wait to see where she goes, you know, she's inspiring. But are there people who look at me and go, she's so dumb and will never get anywhere? And they're like, yeah, I'm sure there are. But are those people on my 5 list of very important, valued opinions? Probably not. So I think there's got to be a stop point where we say, you know, I have enough self-worth through the other resources in my life and through myself, and I know that what I'm doing is making me a better person, and I see potential in myself to continue to grow and improve, that if you're telling me that I can't, that's not an energy that I want in my life. And that's where you turn back to those 5 or 10 or 20 people whose opinions really matter to you and with whom you have connections, that they know you and are going to give you the hard truth sometimes that you need to hear, but ultimately have your best interests at hand. If that person isn't on your short list of people you rely on, at the end of the day, you just can't listen to them. And that it's a lot harder to put into practice than it is to say, that's for sure. But if there's a follower that just is hating on all of your posts and just harshing your vibes, they're not on your short list. So don't listen to them.
Block.
Or block them.
I mean, at the end of the day, you have that power, and you have that power to do it and you have that power to do it in your own mind. The people that matter don't care, and the people that care don't matter. It's a little bit slightly different take on that 5 people who really, you know, whose opinion you respect. You know, but I think, again, we have more power to control that. And so much of what we get from self-image is through our own self-dialogue and our own filters. And if you start anywhere, start with, how do I realize when I'm putting a filter in place so that I can learn not to put my filter in place? And, you know, I think that can be a very empowering thing.
Having self-worth is not allowing other people to define your self-worth.
Yeah. Yep. And not connecting your self-worth to transactions or scorecards. Like I said, that woman on the train, she saw your worth and she saw the bright light through none of the filters, right? Because there was no reason for you to think she had a filter. So not only did you see her for who she was, but you let her see you for who you were. And that's why that was such a powerful connection. It's such a small moment. But when you see pure light from such a small part of ourselves, and again, that one small interaction, think about how that's impacted you over the last year. Because it's been about a year since you were in China, right?
It's actually 2.
Okay.
Crazy.
But that one small exchange and the power in it. Well, if that woman doesn't have self-worth or worth, and to your mind, you don't know whether she was just happened to be a homeless person who got on the train. You don't know if she had a burrito and a scarf, and she gave them both to you. And all she saw was a cold, hungry girl who was trying to take the train somewhere. And you had no context. There was nothing in your filing system to throw filters in. What a beautiful microcosm of exactly the whole thing we're talking about. You had the light in you and she saw it. So Lily, from a self-image and self-perspective and self-worth and all of that, you've had the light in you since the moment you were born.
Aww.
Stop. No, I agree. I think people put filters over themselves and over other people because they're scared. And one of the main things that I think is the biggest filter of literally anything is being too confident in your self-image, like being conceited. I don't think there's such a thing. In my opinion, I don't think anyone's really conceited. I think they're just overcompensating because of how scared they are of what other people are seeing them as. So they're just trying to make it seem like they don't care what other people think because they're in love with themselves, even though they probably are not in love with themselves. So that was just one of the things I wanted to talk about was like being conceited. I don't think that it's real. I think it's probably the biggest filter they have. In my head, when you describe filters, I think they're carrying around like one of these like shoulder sacks with like all these different filters in there, and they're just like picking them out as they go. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the biggest one that they just carry with them everywhere, is just being so confident in themselves.
The magnifying, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be what lets light in, or it doesn't have to be it's a gray shade, a blue shade, a red shade. It could be I put this in front and it magnifies me. There's other people that put the filter in front of them that shrunk them down and made them smaller and not noticeable. And you got vulnerable earlier, Erin, but I would imagine that when you were that middle schooler who was a little self-conscious about her weight, you made yourself smaller, metaphorically, because you didn't want to show up on people's radar screen. And that when you lost the weight and you didn't need that filter anymore, people started to see you for who you were, and you always were. You perceived that as their perception of you. We just talked about how it might have been you just stopped putting that filter down because you didn't feel you need to, and now they saw you for who you were, and always have been.
Yep.
Right? And I don't know. I mean, I've been bullied. I've probably laughed at someone who was the butt of a joke, and I'm not necessarily proud of it. I mean, sometimes you just get caught up in the moment. I won't ever say I was a bully, but I probably have been stupid at times when I was in high school or college, right? But if you believe everybody has worth, then you have to give yourself the same benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I think that's what people forget, is they leave themselves out. They're preaching all this stuff. They're like, oh my gosh, you from the second you're born, you are worth something. You have all these rights. You have all these people that care about you. And then they like step back and they have all these filters in front of them. And I think that's what we should focus on.
And I'm gonna be presumptuous for a moment. Erin?
Yes.
Did any of that resonate?
Yes. Maybe.
Maybe a little. I'm just, like I said, I might be being a bit presumptuous, but I think, you're on this journey. I think you have a lot of bravery for what you've done. Writing the book, making yourself vulnerable, going on that trip, quitting your job. I mean, those are all such brave things. I think you need to give yourself a break and recognize those things for what they are. And then when you go to Chicago this weekend and you meet all these other people, right? Forget the noises around you in the theater. Forget the seats and the people chatting on either side. Become part of the movie. and leave your filters in the hotel room.
Yep. I love the quote about people will forget what you do, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And that's something that we all have internal control over.
Yep.
So even if those filters are there, if we use the filters for good instead of to make someone else feel belittled or less worthy than.
Building other people up, that's to be admired,
Mhm.
right? Encouraging other
Mhm.
people. Lily said it earlier. Turn some of that on yourself,
Yep.
you know? Because if you're always giving the filters that make other people more, and the filters you put on yourself make you less, well, all that does is it exaggerates the separation. You know, things in the
Yep.
mirror, things in the mirror are closer than they appear. So when you look at somebody else and you're like, oh, well, look how successful they are. Things that you're looking at are probably, you're closer to that than you give yourself credit for. And Lily, don't ever let anybody make you feel smaller than you are. You're in a time of your life when it's probably the most intense. It doesn't just disappear on graduation day. But if you have the self-awareness that you seem to have based on your comments and based on picking this topic up, you're in a pretty good place to be able to have a pretty healthy perspective on things once you get out of that tempest in a teapot called high school. You'll never get completely away from it, but you just, don't turn on yourself. Don't become the dialogue that you think other people are putting on you, right? Keep the filters away. I think you'll be fine. And Aaron, you just gotta, man, give yourself some credit.
There's this great image of a headstone with the person's name and birth and death date on it, and it has listed out how many followers they had and how many retweets they had instead of any type of meaning. But those numbers will only define you if you allow that to be your story. If you set those aside as a part of but not your whole life, then you become so much more than that version. So we control our stories, it's true, but
Yep. And likes are today's currency in a lot of ways because it can turn into a livelihood that way, right? So just like we're all willing to say, just because you make a lot of money doesn't mean you're important, but making a lot of money can make things a little easier in life. So as long as you know, all right, in my transactional mindset, I want followers and I want likes, but that doesn't translate into anything to do with self-worth. As long as you can keep that perspective, I think you're fine. Well, I think this was a great conversation. We got really deep. I think that, Aaron, what I'd like to ask is if we could talk a little bit about your book next time.
yeah, absolutely.
If we could, if we could, Lily has a copy and I have a copy, and we can go through it for the next call and maybe come at you with a couple of questions about a couple of stories. And, when we post this up, if it gets people to want to read your book, I think that'd be a good thing.
Well, I always tell people that, storytelling is not just listening to and telling a story. It's about starting a conversation. And I've been really interested to have conversations with readers of my book because you're right. That's a very vulnerable thing to do is to give someone your story and let them take away what they want to. But I also think that there's a sort of beauty in that of you can probably teach me something about my own work because you probably see the story as from a different perspective. I know you see the story from a different perspective. So I'm intrigued to know what readers are taking away from the story that I've given them. I've gotten a couple emails with some really interesting takeaways. So if anything, the conversation is really fascinating to me. So I look forward to kind of hearing what your thoughts might be.